Hi everyone, it's James here from McDSP, and you join me in the hallowed halls of Gospel Oak Studios here in, Mike, where are we?
Warwickshire.
And for those of you who care, that's outside Birmingham, which is outside London. I'm here with the man, the legend, Mr. Mike Exeter, and we're working with some McDSP loveliness, aren't we, mate?
Yes, we are, yeah.
We've got a pair of APBs downstairs in the server room, the control room.
I think that makes us kind of unique, doesn't it?
I think
We've got
so.
24 channels of it.
We've got an APB-16 and an APB-8 all racked up in loveliness.
Yeah.
And we're working on a Studio Rex track.
Yep.
It's called It's You, featuring the rather lovely vocals of Jack Rubinacci. And you've been playing, we've got the mix set up, but we've then explain a little about what we've done. We've got the mix going, but we've now run it through the Moo X Mixer.
Yeah, I got a mix happening with my normal procedure, so I work totally in the box. And as a starting point, we put the McDSP Moo X Mixer in, which I guess emulates a console of sorts. So what I've done is I've taken my normal groups, which I have within my mix. I do a stems grouping thing for later, so we've been able to insert it on a bunch of stereo auxes. And I started tweaking, adding a little bit of saturation, seeing what the compression does on each channel, and seeing what the EQ is. It's just a high and low shelving EQ. And it's quite interesting because I'm going back and tweaking reverb times and some of the stuff I'm doing earlier in the mix process to actually go into the mixer. But it's doing some nice stuff. It's making me react to what it's doing. It's like having an analog submixer. I mean, we've got an SSL here, which I'm not going through anyway. So it's quite interesting to see how the analog side of it reacts. But it's all under plug-in control, which is fantastic.
Yeah, so we've got 12 stereo pairs of Moo X, of Moo X summing loveliness. So that's 11 subgroups, if you like, and a stereo pair for the master. Now, for those of you who joined me when I was with Paul Drew at his studio down in Surrey, you might remember it's the same song, but this is the real drums and real bass version. Mate, I wouldn't put you through mixing fake stuff. I wouldn't do it to you. So can you just talk us through your kind of the process you've gone through and how you've set the Moo X Mixer up for each of those buses? So
my actual sub mixer, just to show you, is right at the end of my session. I've got an instance of Moo X on each of these stereo auxes. So the individual plugins look like this. They're like an individual channel, which is quite good for seeing what I'm doing. There's a saturation section, which I'm assuming I've got it in as pre-compressor, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just tweaking to see what it's like. The kick drum channel, I put a little bit of high frequency boost on it, and a little bit of compression, a little bit of saturation. Things go along the various sub mixes. I've got my kicks, my snares, the rest of my drums, the bass, the guitars, various types, vocals, keyboards, percussion. The interesting plugin is back down on the master fader, which is post my meter and my townhouse bus compressor, and we get the full Moo X console, which gives us 16 possible instances, and I can just click on it to get the full mixer. And you can see they're just repetitions of the individual plugin interfaces. So I went through each section, just playing with it, seeing what it brought to the sound. I particularly liked what it was doing on the snare drum, the bass, and the lead vocals. I was able to just get a little bit of saturation without it sounding distorted, because I'm not a massive fan of everything suddenly sounding crunchy. I just wanted it to feel that the performance is sounding more confident. That's the way I put it. It just gives you that volume rather than the peak that we
volume mass rather than volume loud
yes,
level.
Exactly. It's just that density, the girth of it, and because it's analog and it's doing a nice job. The saturation is very little is barely audible, but it does put those harmonics in that kind of makes it feel a little bit more bright and airy. It feels lighter. So you're adding the density, but you're also making it feel kind of like a record. This is a sub mixer, and this is what you would have in any analog situation. You're mixing into this. So any automation is pre this as well. So again, all these things need.
Although you can automate what this is doing, which is very cool.
So if necessary, I would dial back the compression, even because my toms or your toms, are going through the same subgroup as the rest of the drum kit, because that's the way I do it. I kick, snare, and the rest of the kit. So for a tom fill, I might just back the compression off, automate it, and come back in. And the same with the saturation, because the saturation's lovely on the cymbals. But once the toms kicked in, because we like loud toms, it was it was a Trent Reznor record. So. And
there's nothing wrong with that. If he's watching, just in case. Can we dive into some of those? So let's have a listen to the snare, before and after, as it were.
So the way I've had to do it is because of the way we're subgrouping. If I try to bypass the plugin, then we hear everything. You can actually solo the tracks off the mixer, but because of the way my session's set up, and this is doing a submix thing, if I solo up the snare, we can hear it soloing. As soon as I try and bypass it, only the mixer is in solo. Yes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be soloing my VCA group so that we can hear the before and after. So I'll go back to the head of the track and just call up my snares, and then we can bypass. So bypassed.
And we also discovered a neat trick that I didn't know.
The click on the VU meter and it turns into a gain reduction. So what I'm hearing is, I really like what it's doing. I like the compression. It's a very simple compressor. You say it's a very Moo. I love the way it works. So if I maybe make it a little bit more brute force, you can hear what it's actually doing. So here's the saturation.
It's funny, you go through levels of harmonic content and then it softens it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. In this case, we want that sort of the bite of the snare to still come through.
I've done a lot on the way into that snare. I mean, I've got it heavily gated. I've used a drum gate to really clean up, because James's recording room is quite small. You've probably
understatement of the day thus far.
I've never been there, but I feel like I have. But the room's small, the overheads are down. There's so much of all the other cymbals and drums in the floor tom track. So what I'm trying to do is tighten it all up and use the overheads as the glue to put it back together. So that's why that sounds so tight. It's been drum gated. And so what we're doing is we're trying to get the maximum smack out of the snare, but what happens then is you end up with all this peak energy. We're getting that smack, we're getting that top end. Saturation can just be useful just to allow you to pull down that top and then get the signal up, and do it without hitting a compressor, because a compressor reacts differently to saturation. Saturation is like tape saturation. It can't go any further. A compressor will still overshoot and you get the dip after it. Saturation, it just goes, that's it. So this is beautiful for that. Then that allows me to stick the compressor in and shape the sound. So I mean, you can hear what that's doing to the reverb. And yeah, it's very simple controls. It's twist and go. I love the fact that Colin's put they're literally just numbers 0 to 100, because you don't need to know anything else.
These are what decides whether
it's all about that, and that's the point. Even matching the bypass signal, the non-bypass signal is important, so that when we put the whole thing in and out, we're not fooling ourselves with level. And I always start, the snare's actually harmonically complex, so that's a really good point for hearing what something's doing. Snare's great for hearing compression and saturation and all that kind of stuff within the density of a mix. I love it when, trying a bus compressor on a console, listen to the snare, play with the attack and the release, see what happens.
So show us what you're doing on bass.
So the bass is really nice anyway. I've got an amp simulator on it. Put a lot of saturation in, so that's quite clean, still nice, but maybe let's get it to sit up in the track a bit more. Simple as that, really. That to me, as soon as I bypassed it, it felt like the weight had gone. It was like the air had gone from the balloon. now it just feels like it's doing its best. I haven't put any bottom end in. There's no EQ on it. It's literally just a bit of saturation. I can probably put a bit more compression in. It was at 0. See what this does. So that's kind of forcing into the saturation a bit more. Maybe that's what that button does. So in the track, maybe we want a bit more grit. So let's have a listen. Okay, so let's see whether we can just give a bit more grunt to the bass.
It almost helps, gives it some more space.
It does. Yeah, I think again, it's because we're using such small amounts. Was it Jeff Emmerich who said the 1% rule? You know, just like a lot of 1% add up to a whole lot of something. And I think that's the thing. I mean, okay, I'm saying that and I've got saturation at 3 o'clock, which is quite a lot. But it's all these little bits that all add up to make it do its thing. You know, we didn't used to trash analog consoles. We didn't always go for massive amounts of distortion. We were looking for something that just gave us that space, that made the upper harmonics maybe just lift an instrument so there was room to fit something in below. And I think this is where something as simple as a mixer like this, limited controls, you can really actually see what difference just the balance, you know, levels can do, and the amount of harmonics you're putting in. Very, very small amounts of everything. I mean, okay, on the bass, if we look at the gain reduction, there's probably loads now. No, there really isn't. That's not even moving.
Tickling.
Yeah. The snare's getting hit the worst, and that's probably like a couple of dB. But it doesn't need much more, and that's the thing, is not to overdo it. All these things just allowing you to craft that space and energy that you're looking for.
Okay, so let's talk about vocals, because quite frankly, they are, I don't care what anybody says, and this is the drummer saying it, it's the most important part of the track.
So vocals are on 8 here. I've done absolutely nothing to them. So let's see what we can do with that.
There's a love that I've run to, and it's you. It's you.
Take it back a bit.
I don't know why, but I'm always falling. I don't know why.
So that's taking out dB, 2 dB now. Not sure if I like it particularly for a lead vocal. Well, let's see what it does in the track.
It's just giving a little push, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Now the important thing here is what I was saying is that vocal is now pre all of this saturation. So if I move the levels in the track, I'm going to affect how it's hitting the MoEx. So I'd have to do my vocal automation on that volume knob
in the MoEx vocal,
which is fine. You know, that's not a problem at all, because you can you could assign a knob to it. You could use a Huey knob, because I like working on a control surface. But that's kind of cool. I need to put my my effects back in so that it sits in the track, and we'll just see what that sounds like.
I don't know why, but I'm always falling. I don't know why, but I'm always falling.
It's nice. It's doing nice things.
I think it's one of those things where you notice it when you turn it off.
Yes.
Because it's doing that analog zhuzhy thing, even with all the channels at 12 o'clock. It's still doing that thing.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that's the thing, that's where you have to really, really take notice, listen to it and do the comparisons and match again and just go, is that actually doing something that I like? Have I bypassed it? Am I doing the right thing? Because we all make mistakes, but you know, like not switching the EQ on, that's a classic.
Oh, never done that before.
No. So what I love about it is it is a completely different tool to add to your arsenal. If you like especially just for this kind of thing, if you like the idea of analog summing, this would be perfect, because I think it gives you the console feel. You could set it up as a 16 channel submixer, or in this case you've got 24 channels. You set it up like a console, you treat it like a console, and you mix into it. And this is really forgiving. It's not going to mix for you. I kind of think it's like you feel like you're hitting against a rubber band. You know, if you put a decent bus compressor on, you mix into it, you kind of feel that it's helping push back at you. It's the same on the saturation on each channel. It's kind of cool, but there is a limit to what sounds good. After a certain point, it will close down, and your mix will just sound like that. And we're looking for as much width and fidelity as possible. Well, I am.
So, Mike, I have to ask the obvious question. Do you like it?
Yeah, I do. I think it's really good. I think it would really suit, if I was static, working out of my own room on a big system, and I didn't want to go for an analog console, and I wanted to explore analog signal processing on mix buses and individual channels, then it would be perfect.
Mike, thanks so much. At this point, I'd normally reach out and shake your hand, but for obvious reasons, yeah, all that sort of stuff. Thank you for inviting us. Thanks to Baz here at Gospel Oak Studios for looking after us and being a fabulous host. So I hope you enjoyed that. My name's James Ivey from DSP, and we'll see you again very soon.